Welcome to Beyond My Crisis. I'm your co-host Ron Rosnick here for part 2 of our segment on guardianship.
And I'm Vivian Gaspar, and we have this special being 2 parts because people have no idea how critical this is. And it reaches primarily to elderly people, but it can reach even beyond. And we're back today with Juliet Fairley and Rick Black. And Rick is a volunteer director at the Americans Against Abusive Probate Guardianship. Welcome back, both of you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Vivian. This problem can affect anyone, and what we've seen is whether you're worth $20,000 or several million, you can be a celebrity. People like Casey Kasem of America's Top 40, Mickey Rooney testified before Congress on the abuse that his family and his guardian did to him. B.B. King, the famous jazz guitarist, also a victim in Las Vegas, where my father-in-law was a victim. And Glenn Campbell's children as well.
Wow.
Anyone of wealth is a natural target if they think that they can get them into the guardianship system. But honestly, this is every man's problem, whether you're worth $20,000 or $20 million.
And Juliet is a living testament to the challenges you faced with your family.
Absolutely.
What happened in a nutshell?
Well, in a nutshell, what happened is that the person that my father had chosen to be in charge of his medical care was neglecting his medical care, pulling his teeth rather than filling his cavities, not delivering his blood pressure medication. And I went to the Veterans Administration and they said, oh, you're going to have to go to court, which was the worst advice. And I didn't know what else to do in order to improve his care. I went to the court and it made it worse. It's been worse. But the problem is that when you look at this situation, I used to kind of hear about these rumors, but I thought that'll never happen to me. That will never happen in my family. So that's the problem, is people think it would never happen to me. And so they're not really concerned about it. And then you kind of naturally progress in that direction, and then you find yourself in it.
What have you seen? You're a national advocate. We're grateful that you've flown in from North Carolina to our studios here in New Jersey. But this is a national problem. We are seeing throughout the country. How do you see that this differed? And are any of these unsuspecting criminals, in other words, the victims, would never suspect that can even be criminal action? Because it is. When someone's not just conning people, for the lack of a better term, out of their money, but as Juliet was just saying, that's physical abuse. When you're pulling someone's teeth out and neglecting, basically removing their medicines from their daily use or as needed, that is physical abuse as well.
It is, Vivian. My recommendation to all families is be prepared. And that preparation involves executing those estate documents. That's first and foremost.
Let's name those estate documents
and
so we know what to do.
Those are draft a will and name an executor. Name the beneficiaries. Do a durable power of attorney to protect yourself on making those financial decisions. Do an advance directive on health care or a health care surrogate so that if you become incapacitated, a loved one can come in to care for you. Have a successor executor on all of those discussions so that there's a balance of power if things go awry, as was the case with Juliet. If you leave it to one, then that person has all the power.
And there are clauses in the agreement that should allow for oversight and inspection of expenditures, medical care, so there could be some kind of consensus in a way, right?
Agreed, Ron. And if you have an odd number of children, it makes it easier because then you can vote as a majority.
The tiebreaker.
And that's right. And there's transparency. But many people today don't have children. So they're depending on a third party that they trust to execute those agreements. And that's when it becomes a little more complex. But number one, be prepared. Execute those documents.
So being prepared is that, you were saying that your family, you were just trusting each other, but to me, be prepared is like have a business contract ready. Do we have to treat family crisis as a business now?
My father had all those papers in place. The problem is the person that he chose is betraying him. And what would have helped is had he put 2 people so that they could balance each other out.
Yes.
So I think that's very important, is to have 2
executors.
people rather than, and not just 2 executors, but 2 healthcare advocates.
Or maybe 3 to do the
Maybe 3,
tiebreaker.
maybe-
Right. That's right, Ron.
as many as possible, because when you leave one person, that leaves the possibility for some kind of what
There's some human clause about power of one is like
Yeah, I'm not that good at it. I'm an engineer, Ron.
So is it ever good to have an attorney? If you've had a trusted family attorney for years, a lot of people have trusted one person. In addition to your children, would they be a good backup? Does that make sense?
I would never go to an attorney. I'll be candid. What I have seen in the 400 plus cases that I've investigated is you generally have more problems because the attorney wants to leverage the court. The attorney generally is self-possessed on making sure that they make money. I coach families around the country. Attorneys have 3 priorities. Number 1, make money. Number 2, build a network that helps me make money. A network is not families. Network is other lawyers and the court if you're an elder law attorney. Number 3 is maybe satisfy a customer or client in that agenda. You as a family member are a distant third in that environment, and he knows keeping judges happy as it pertains to this discussion, fraudulent guardianships. If he keeps a judge happy, he'll make much more money than satisfying a client.
right. So
in
as
a perfect world, you would go to court and you would say, look, this person is abusing my father, not delivering his medications, pulling his teeth instead of filling his cavities, etc., etc. And in a perfect world, the judge would say, oh, this is not correct, and we're going to rectify this. But the problem is that there's so many people that have a interest in the money, including the state,
right.
that it doesn't. The elderly person gets lost in the shuffle.
Right, we were talking about attorneys, and you were saying how corrupt attorneys can be. How do we choose an attorney then? What's the system that would help us?
Diligence.
Diligence.
It's not easy, Ron. Picking an attorney is, if you need one, that is the most important decision
So
that
does-
you'll ever make for your parent.
So would Avio or these online review systems
Very
be
misleading.
They're
I
misleading.
never turn to them because it's attorneys that create those ratings.
Yeah.
Some of the best ranked Avo and I can't remember the other service. Some of the best rated attorneys around the country are the attorneys that get named in fraudulent guardianships on a routine basis. Some of the most highest profile attorneys in Las Vegas, one actually just got indicted because her primary client, a professional guardian, was exploited over 120 of her clients and was also indicted as well.
So I guess a question would
here's
be to an attorney: are you currently being indicted for any cases?
that one's easy because you
Okay.
can get it on public record. I think a better question would be, do you represent professional guardians?
So
Do
wait,
you represent the public guardian? Because those entities in any given judicial district are paid from the estate to, quote, protect your best interest.
you just said a phrase. You said professional guardians. I was always under, well, my parents now, misinformation that a guardian is someone you know, love, trust, whomever, to be your guardian. I mean, I've been appointed my aunt's guardian. I mean, you have, hopefully, I'm my mother's guardian because she's 71. So the question's going to be, wait, what do you mean a professional guardian? What is that?
Vivian, there's 3 types of guardians. First, let's understand the profile. A guardian is someone that is appointed by the court. By default, when you say you want a guardian, there will be a court involved, and that court, those officials that support that court expect to be paid for their services, and that payment comes from your state. So guardianships are very expensive. Inside the guardianship umbrella, you're going to have family guardians that still have to be appointed by the court. They aren't paid for their services. You do it out of love. You're the guardian angel of your adult child or your parent or your sibling. Then you have this group called professional guardians. Professional guardians are paid, and they're paid extremely well. Many of them make several $100,000 a year. They charge upwards of $250 an hour.
Are they
Who are they?
licensed?
Are they
No,
attorneys?
no.
Who are these people?
They're
No,
not- there's no
they're regular
licensing.
people. No.
There's no regulatory
Let's be
board.
very clear. Most states, all they have to be is 18 years old. They don't have to have a high school diploma. They have no professional licensing requirements. They have no certification requirements. There's less oversight.
Felons okay, apply, right?
No, no. All states require that you not be a convicted felon.
Well, there's something.
But
But Karen-
the court never does a background check on guardians to determine whether they have a felony charge or conviction or bankruptcy. Bankruptcy and felony convictions are both named in almost every state. That
Is there an
if-
Angie's List that you can?
Not that I've seen, but a simple background check would divulge this information on anyone. What we see in the probate court, really building on Juliet's comment, the courts are incapable or don't care to be thorough with due process. Time and time again, in fraudulent guardianships or involuntary guardianships, we see a petition is filed that is reek with lies. There is so much in it that is absolutely untrue. There's no physician's certificate to say that you're incapacitated, and they send it into a court, and a judge has a clerk stamp it, and then the orders
Right.
are issued. And once those orders are issued, that guardian can run down to the bank and move all of your assets into their control
Over time, over a period of time.
Oh no,
in about 10
immediately.
minutes.
10
And-
minutes, and so they could say, send $2 million out of the account.
That's correct.
And there's no.
That's perfect.
That's
Perfectly
correct.
legal.
And
And
it
it-
happens all the time. Ron, it
all
happens
the
all the
time.
time. All the
What
time.
how many cases per year does this happen to then, roughly?
We estimate right around 15,000.
15,000?
There's 100
Nationally?
Yes. There's
Which is-
176,000, according to the National Center for State Courts, 176,000 adult guardianships were established in 2015. And that rate is growing at double digits. It will triple by 2050. Triple.
So this is a huge
Like
crisis.
It is a huge
7
crisis.
to 10% of these cases
That's correct.
have some amount of fraud in the hopper of.
That's
of this.
correct, Ron. And as I interview folks around the country, and I take all the intake calls for AAAPG as part of my role as a director, we estimate, we estimate $10 billion are being lost. Familial assets, those assets, yours, your mother's, your dad's, your sister, your
Right.
brother, because once they're drawn into the probate court system, if you love your family member, those that you have been assigned, you will spend nearly your last penny trying to save that loved one. And they rely on that. I've got your loved one. Isolation is a primary aspect of this.
Starving
Conquer and
them,
divide.
starving,
Well,
Divide and conquer.
over
right?
medicating, isolating them.
Wait, who's
And
doing
it's
this?
True.
The
Um,
guardian
and
can
their
do
attorneys.
Right, and this is called a guardian ad litem. Is that the
No,
term?
no.
What is that?
These are the guardians and their attorneys. The guardians and their attorneys work very effectively together. We use a phrase: isolate, defame the family, fleece the estate. The intent
Isolate,
is
defame, and fleece.
that's right. Isolate, defame, and fleece. It's all about greed. Fraudulent guardianships, involuntary guardianships are all about greed. I know you have money, and I know if I get you in a guardianship, I will get the enjoyment of your estate. It could be hundreds of years of assets that have been accumulated in a family, and all of a sudden it transfers to a third party. Isolation is part of the scheme because control of the body gives you control of the environment.
and control of the
The
family. members.
the family can't speak for them. They go to the judge and say, "You're too incapacitated to testify.
Right.
You can't come talk." Then I
So
control the environment.
Both of you feel like you're victims in this. What do you see now that you didn't see before when this started that our viewing audience may be able to learn from your mistakes?
Well, I want to say that these professional guardians that the courts are appointing should be first RNs, registered nurses. These guardians are not medical professionals. And if you're dealing with elderly people, the least amount of certification should be that they're RNs.
Well,
Okay?
what about background investigations?
That
How do you
too.
know you
That
don't?
too. But the minimum certification should be that the guardian, if you're not going to appoint a family member, then should be a professional nurse. Or if you decide, or if it's determined that a family member is not being honest and respectful and is abusing the elderly person, then the professional guardian that you're going to appoint should at least be an RN that has a background check. At least an RN.
So we would have these people sign a document that says we authorized you to do a background check, and you get their social security number, date of birth, driver's license, and you go to a background checking company and you get it done.
Well, they're
it's-
certified by the state. They are certified. Once the court appoints the guardian, they are certified by the state. The problem is the state doesn't require that these guardians be nurses, RNs. And I'm saying to myself, the person's 80 years old, 87 years old, 90 years old, whatever their age is.
Okay.
Don't you think that the guardian should be a medical professional?
Okay, but are there ever exceptions? I completely agree with you. That is very logical. I just want to know who's in danger. So does that mean anyone who has an elderly person in life, let's say the cutoff is what, 70, 75 years old and above? Is that who we're concerned about right now?
Yeah, well, anyone can be drawn into guardianship. I've got a 19-year-old on Staten Island.
Wait, I don't understand. How could a 19-year-old be a victim of guardianship abuse?
He was injured in a car accident at 16 years old. He was awarded $1.5 million.
I see.
His mother and father divorced. They have a great relationship, but they chose not to stay together and they divorced. An attorney who had targeted this young man decided, I'm going to file for guardianship over him because I can create a staged conflict that says his mom is stealing from him because she doesn't want to work and she's going to live off of his estate and never let him enjoy the benefits of his estate. So that attorney files ex parte, and we've talked about what that means. The family never got noticed. They were never given the opportunity to come to a hearing. And then overnight, this attorney had complete control of this young man's estate, and now he is staging litigation between the mom and the son, even though the son is saying, I love my mom, I want to live with my mom, we don't want this guardianship.
What an
But
evil attorney this
Absolutely.
is.
But the judge is embracing it, Ron. That's the issue. I come back with your viewers to I do want to scare them. Look, most guardians are good. I'll admit that. Most lawyers are good. Most judges are good. But in the probate family court system, if they choose to go bad, and many do in a criminal environment with criminal intent, there is no backstop to stop it. Law enforcement doesn't engage. Fighting them is financially impossible. They will drive you bankrupt. They want you to engage and fight them. So yes, even a 19-year-old, granted one that's worth $1.5 million and is extremely vulnerable. This guy makes straight A's, makes A's and B's. He's graduating from high school.
So he's fully functional.
Oh, very
I'm imagining
functional.
that if he received the settlement, he may have been incapacitated. Maybe he's,
No,
bedridden. I don't know.
No,
I would
that's
think
right.
that somebody who got such an award would be incapacitated. That's why they received the award.
It was personal injury at birth, cerebral palsy, and he's got some deficiencies, but his mind is with it. He loves his mom. There is no need for the involvement of the court.
Would if somebody receives a settlement or has any sizable value to or the assets, would a trust help prevent that?
By definition, it should. What
Should.
we see is that parties with trust are commonly targeted by predatory attorneys.
How do people find out about a trust then? Online search? I thought they're kind of
No.
shielded by.
They are shielded, but oftentimes this is back to the attorney network. Hey, I do trust. I know many of these trust perversion cases are by the actual attorney who drafted the trust.
I see.
So
So it's not from public record.
No. By
Okay.
by definition, trusts keep you out of the public record. That's why they're such a unique tool. They're also to keep you out of court. When, though, this is the perversion part, when you are identified for guardianship, they go into your house, they search all your records. So they see that there's a trust agreement, and that is a license really to steal, because that trust is then not presented transparently to the probate or family court by law. They can keep it off to the side. They don't say that they're assuming the trust, but they do assume the assets. And we see time and time again where the trust assets are then converted to the third party fraudulently, but they claim throughout the entire process with the court that I didn't take over the trust.
And what's the best way to prevent that specific fraud?
My guidance to, because we don't have federal laws to protect these victims, my guidance to families is do not draft a trust. The risk is far too great. Go back to those simple instruments of joint ownership on your assets, execute that durable power of attorney, execute that healthcare surrogate, healthcare advance directive, execute that will and name your executor, and have 2 successor trustees on all those documents, preferably a tiebreaker, 3 if you have 3 children or 5 children or 7 children.
You're recommending people with odd number of children. This is called really good pre-planning.
Where can people find more information, though? Is there a book that you would...
I'm working on a book. It's actually done. It's gone into the printer.
What's it going to be called?
It's called The Family Guide to Prevent Elder Abuse, and it's written by a writer, Thomas Wright. He is also a victim. He's a Hollywood producer, director, and writer. I'm very pleased with what he put together. I was a contributor with 8 or 10 other authors, but it talks about how to identify those risk factors that might place your loved one in a scenario to be not only abused, but in a fraudulent guardianship, and then what to do if you find yourself in that unfortunate position.
So there's some light at the end
There
of this.
is. And there's more light too. I've spent the last year and a half lobbying in Washington, D.C. I quit my job 2 years ago. I've been doing this full time as a volunteer.
It's very commendable.
Well, no, thanks. But this is from the heart.
From the heart.
When you live through this, you are touched forever.
That's right.
I'm here because my wife can't be. This has changed our family. The fact that we couldn't see or speak to her dad in private the last 2 years of his life, and that experience cost our family $1 million. It's something that I thought could never happen in my country. We've been blessed. I want to share those blessings with others. That's why I do what I do, because nobody should have to live through this.
Thank you for that.
So we've done lobbying. We have a bill that was just introduced in the 115th Congress by
federal
Senator,
bill.
Absolutely.
That's great. Fantastic.
By Senator Chuck Grassley, who's the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. It's Senate Bill 178. It provides 2 aspects, which Juliet referred to. It would assign trainers within the Department of Justice and the FBI to assist local police to educate them on trademark elder abuse schemes and fraudulent guardianship schemes. It also demands that there be a national registry so that we keep track of all persons who are assigned a guardian around the country, and to have them report their financial dealings through that national registry and have a federal oversight organization. We estimate that there's also $1 billion of Medicaid fraud that's involved with these fraudulent guardianships, because routinely the assets are consumed by the guardian. The victim is placed then on Medicaid, which becomes a burden to the taxpayer when there was plenty of assets to care for
So
them.
they should have a good motivation to pass this bill. Now, the question I
So
have
what
is,
can we do then?
well, first bring awareness to should write to this, you said as a senator?
It is Chuck Grassley.
Chuck
It's
Grassley, maybe to urge for them to pass it. But my question would be, does part of this bill, as far as you're aware, potentially make criminal action for any physical abuse that you're mentioning? I mean, when you said someone's teeth are being pulled out against the will, that is physical abuse.
Yes, it is.
And also to have more oversight on who's allowed to become this cottage industry of guardians? Do they have background investigations? Are they not allowed to be criminals? Are they, you know,
Are they
who
medical
are they?
professionals?
Are they medical professionals?
Or
And, oh,
some
by the
licensing.
way, they should be limited.
There
You
is
shouldn't have
licensing,
one.
but it's based on very, very bare minimum.
But wait a second. I don't
requirements.
think one person should be allowed to be a guardian for 100 people or 50 people. They should have vast amounts of limitations. Maybe be a guardian for 5 people so it's not turned into someone's occupation where they're fleecing millions of
Or
dollars.
just have some ISO standardization of that, a protocol of checks and balances.
And the thing about this justice system here is that I grew up with a military veteran father, so I grew up with the flag and the military bases and saluting the flag, and I believed in the justice system. I believed that if I went to the court that there would be justice, but you would never believe what has unfolded. And you have to live it. And if you would have told me, I'm a journalist, a business journalist, if you had told me that if he had come to me and told me this, I would not have believed him. It has to happen to you for you to be like, wow.
Well, what we're going to do is thank you very much, both of you, Juliet and Rick, for coming on to our show. And what we're doing here at Beyond My Crisis is elevating knowledge and bringing information that we are now sharing with our viewing audience throughout the country. And we're going to have posted what else everyone can do, who they can write, specific information, and websites and resources. And yes, everyone has to deal with it so we can get beyond this crisis and grow together as helping people protect, obviously not just elderly, but anyone can be a victim. Someone's necessary windfall of an 18-year-old's $1.5 million or so, 1.1 million, should not make them a victim and tear apart a family. Thank you for tuning in.